After months of silence from the Willow Creek HOA, I thought my battle with them was finally a thing of the past. My ranch was thriving, my cattle grazed peacefully, and the newly rebuilt fences stood tall, marking the clear boundary between my land and the HOA's manicured subdivisions. The air smelled of pine and freedom. Every morning I would sip my coffee on the porch, listening to the birds and watching the sun rise over my pastures, a reward for years of struggle and courtroom battles. But as I learned, the HOA had a special skill for finding new ways to cause trouble. It started with a thin, cream-colored envelope delivered by certified mail. The letterhead read, Willow Creek HOA Compliance Office. The content was as absurd as it was infuriating, a fine issued for a non-compliant perimeter fence that, according to them, violated the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Never mind that my property was legally outside of HOA jurisdiction. Never mind that my fence had been reviewed and approved during previous legal disputes. They cited an obscure, decades-old landscaping covenant, claiming that my new fence, which was several feet taller than the ornamental fences inside their community, created visual discord and neighborhood disharmony. The fine? $500 per day, retroactive for 3 weeks. I stood on my porch, gripping the letter, my blood pressure rising. These people didn't learn. They couldn't accept defeat. They were determined to nickel and dime me into submission. But this time I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going on the offensive. I called my attorney, James, who had become more like family over the years. "You're not going to believe this," I said as I read him the letter. James chuckled dryly on the other end. "I believe it. This is classic HOA overreach. They're testing the boundaries again, hoping you'll cave or negotiate." "Not this time," I replied. "Let's hit them where it hurts." James had an idea brewing before I even finished my sentence. "Well, you know that rezoning petition you mentioned a while back? The one for your extra acreage behind their clubhouse?" I smiled. "Yeah, I think it's time we file it. You see, after winning my previous battles, I had quietly purchased several adjoining parcels behind the HOA's main clubhouse, a patch of scrubland they used for community picnics, nature trails, and their precious garden club. What they didn't know was that those parcels were technically outside their HOA jurisdiction and fully under county zoning regulations. With the right permits, I could change their use, and I had something very special in mind. Livestock manure storage. My ranch had grown over the years, and with more cattle came more waste. A manure storage facility on my newly acquired land would solve a lot of operational headaches and serve as poetic justice for the HOA's relentless harassment. James and I wasted no time filing the paperwork. The county zoning board, which was already familiar with my long feud with the HOA, saw no legal obstacles. My application was thorough. Environmental studies, drainage plans, odor control measures, and livestock management protocols were all documented meticulously. Meanwhile, the HOA doubled down on their fence fine, sending me weekly violation notices and increasing the penalty. They had no idea what was coming. Word spread quickly after the zoning board posted the public notice for the manure storage facility. Panic set in among the HOA residents. Emergency meetings were called, angry emails flooded the county office, and petitions were circulated. Barbara, the former HOA president who had once led the charge against me, re-emerged like a bad penny, rallying her loyalists to fight my application. They argued that a manure facility would destroy property values, attract flies, and make their lives miserable. The irony was delicious. They had spent years making my life miserable, and now they finally tasted the medicine they had so gleefully prescribed. I attended the public zoning hearing flanked by James and my ranch manager, Miguel. The county chamber was packed with HOA members, their faces twisted in self-righteous outrage. Barbara stood at the podium, dramatically waving photos of families at HOA picnics near the affected parcel. "This facility will poison our air. Our children won't be able to play outside. Property values will plummet," she shrieked. The County Board calmly listened. When it was my turn, I approached the microphone, holding a thick binder of documents. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "I sympathize with the community's concerns. That's why I've gone above and beyond to ensure this facility meets every environmental and health standard required by law. Unlike the HOA, which has no jurisdiction here, I have complied with every regulation. This facility will be state-of-the-art, fully enclosed, and odor-controlled." I glanced at Barbara. Furthermore, this action only became necessary after repeated harassment and illegal fines levied against me for the simple act of maintaining my legally compliant fence. "This is not retaliation. This is efficient land use," the board members whispered among themselves. One commissioner nodded. "Your documentation is thorough. You've addressed all our concerns." A few days later, the board approved my rezoning application unanimously. The HOA's worst nightmare was now official. Construction began immediately. Bulldozers arrived, concrete pads were poured, and massive steel storage tanks were installed, complete with advanced methane filtration systems. The facility looked more like a high-tech factory than a traditional manure pit. But the HOA members didn't care about the technology. All they cared about was that a livestock waste facility now sat directly behind their precious clubhouse. The stench, though minimal due to the filtration systems, became their phantom enemy. They claimed to smell it even when there was no activity. Their imaginations ran wild. The HOA board, desperate to undo the damage, filed a frivolous lawsuit challenging the zoning board's decision, but the judge threw it out almost immediately. Their arguments had no legal basis. Meanwhile, my ranch thrived. The manure storage allowed me to expand my cattle operation, selling organic fertilizer to local farms and earning additional income. My attorney filed a countersuit for harassment, seeking damages for the baseless fines they had imposed months earlier. The court awarded me a hefty settlement, forcing the HOA to pay tens of thousands of dollars in restitution. As months passed, the HOA fractured. Homeowners grew tired of endless legal battles, rising dues, and Barbara's vendetta. At the next election, she was ousted permanently. A new board, more moderate and eager to restore peace, reached out to me. They offered a truce, proposing to nullify all past disputes if I agreed not to expand the manure facility any further. With the upper hand firmly in my grasp, I agreed, under one condition: they would publicly acknowledge that my ranch operated fully within legal boundaries, and that the HOA would never again attempt to regulate or fine me. The public statement was printed in the HOA newsletter and distributed to every household. The final nail in their coffin was my victory barbecue, where I invited neighbors, HOA members, and non-members alike to tour the facility and see for themselves how modern and clean the operation truly was. Many were impressed. Some even apologized for their earlier support of Barbara's crusade. As I stood by the massive tanks, flipping burgers for my guests, I couldn't help but smile. The HOA had fined me for my fence. In return, I had legally rezoned their backyard into a manure storage facility. My ranch was secure. My business was thriving. And the HOA finally learned the cost of picking a fight with the wrong rancher. The months following my victory over the Willow Creek HOA brought an eerie quiet to the neighborhood. The legal battles, the zoning wars, the community meetings filled with screaming HOA members, all of it had faded into memory. My ranch was thriving. The manure storage facility was operating at full capacity, efficiently processing waste into high-grade organic fertilizer that I sold to nearby farms and landscaping companies. For the first time in years, I was no longer fending off attacks. Instead, I was focused on growth, stability, and reclaiming the peace I had purchased when I first bought the ranch. But as I learned over and over again, the HOA's most persistent members never truly give up. Some of them simply wait for the next opportunity to strike. It began, as most of their schemes did, with whispers. Miguel, my ranch manager, was the first to catch wind of it. "Boss, he said one morning while we were repairing a section of the cattle fencing. "I heard from one of the supply guys. Some folks in the HOA are talking to the county again, trying to get the zoning changed." Back. I looked up from my work, my jaw tightening. "Trying to reverse an already approved rezoning?" Miguel nodded. "Yeah. They say they're trying to form a concerned citizens group. They think if they put enough pressure on the board and stir up environmental fears, they can force the county to shut you down." The audacity was staggering. After everything, after losing in court multiple times, after paying me damages, after finally signing that public acknowledgement of my rights, they still couldn't leave me alone. I called James immediately. He was already familiar with the rumor. "I've been tracking this," he said. "They're working with a new group now, a local environmental activist organization. On paper, these folks claim to be concerned about groundwater contamination and methane emissions. But behind closed doors, it's the same HOA ringleaders pulling the strings." I exhaled slowly. "We've followed every regulation. Every inspection has been clean." "I know," James replied. "Legally, you're on solid ground. But if they stir up enough public outrage, they might convince a few politicians to revisit your permits. We need to stay ahead of this." Over the following weeks, I watched as the campaign against me unfolded. Flyers appeared around town, filled with exaggerated claims and outright lies. The manure storage facility was portrayed as a ticking time bomb that would destroy the environment, poison local wells, and spread disease. They painted me as a greedy landowner exploiting loopholes at the expense of the community. Social media pages sprang up overnight, filled with doctored images of supposed leaks, chemical spills, and sick livestock. The HOA's puppet group held rallies, attracting a small but vocal group of activists who had no idea they were being used. I realized that this wasn't just about zoning anymore. This was about destroying my reputation. They couldn't beat me legally, so now they were trying to turn public opinion against me. It was time to fight back, not in the courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. I hired a professional public relations firm. They helped me organize educational tours of the facility, inviting journalists, bloggers, and local influencers to see the operation firsthand. Reporters from the county's biggest newspaper toured the site, met with my staff, and interviewed environmental engineers who had signed off on the facility's safety standards. We filmed videos showing the cutting-edge filtration systems, the methane capture technology, and the strict protocols we followed to protect the land and water. The PR team flooded social media with facts, testimonials from satisfied neighbors, and interviews with agricultural experts who praised my operation as a model for sustainable ranching. I even hosted an open-house barbecue for local families, inviting them to bring their children, walk the grounds, and see the truth with their own eyes. Many of the same residents who once sided with Barbara and the HOA attended, curious and skeptical at first, but slowly reassured by what they saw. "This isn't what we were told at all," one woman said as she toured the enclosed storage tanks. "It barely smells like anything." Another neighbor chimed in. "Honestly, I'm more worried about the HOA's lies than your ranch." The tide was turning. The smear campaign began to unravel under the weight of facts and transparency. But the HOA's remaining diehards weren't done yet. In one last-ditch effort, they filed a petition to declare the facility a public nuisance. This time, they brought in a high-priced out-of-town lawyer who specialized in environmental litigation. The county scheduled yet another public hearing, and once again, the room was packed. The HOA faction showed up in force, armed with binders of manipulated data and paid expert witnesses ready to testify against me. Barbara herself, though no longer officially part of the board, sat in the front row, her eyes fixed on me with cold hatred. The hearing dragged on for hours as one HOA member after another took the podium, reciting prepared statements filled with exaggerated concerns. Their attorney argued that the facility's methane filtration system could fail, that groundwater contamination was inevitable, and that long-term health risks were uncertain. When my turn finally came, I stood before the county commissioners, with James by my side and a team of environmental consultants behind me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice calm but firm. "You've heard a lot of fear-mongering today. But fear is not evidence. The facts remain unchanged. This facility has passed every county, state, and federal inspection. Independent environmental audits have verified that our operations pose no risk to the community. We are in full compliance with every law and regulation. This nuisance claim is nothing more than a political weapon wielded by disgruntled individuals who have waged a personal vendetta against me for years." I paused, locking eyes with Barbara. "We cannot allow personal grudges to dictate county policy." James presented a mountain of documentation, inspection reports, expert testimony, air quality readings, and groundwater sampling data, all confirming the safety and legality of the operation. The county commissioners asked questions, probed the evidence, and carefully reviewed every detail. After several tense hours of deliberation, the lead commissioner finally spoke. "This board finds no evidence of nuisance, hazard, or regulatory violations. The nuisance petition is denied." A collective gasp filled the room. Barbara's face turned pale. The HOA's attorney whispered urgently into his client's ear, but there was nothing left to say. Once again, they had failed. The room slowly emptied, and as I walked out into the parking lot, several residents approached me quietly. "We're sorry," one elderly man said. "We were wrong to support them." Another neighbor shook my hand. "Thank you for standing your ground. Most people would have folded, but the final chapter was yet to come." The HOA's failed nuisance suit opened the door for my countersuit, a massive defamation case targeting both the HOA and the so-called citizens group for spreading false information that damaged my business reputation. James filed the lawsuit within days, citing lost contracts, business interruptions, and the costs of fighting baseless public attacks. Discovery unearthed a treasure trove of internal HOA emails that revealed how Barbara and her allies had orchestrated the entire smear campaign, coordinating fake complaints, doctoring images, and feeding lies to activists and reporters. The county court judge was not amused. "This goes beyond simple neighbor disputes," he ruled. "This is coordinated defamation and harassment." The HOA was ordered to pay substantial damages, enough to cripple their budget for years to come. Several HOA members resigned immediately. The so-called environmental group disbanded, exposed as nothing more than a front for the HOA's ongoing vendetta. Barbara herself faced personal legal consequences for her role in manufacturing evidence and filing false reports with county agencies. Facing mounting legal fees and a broken reputation, she sold her home and left town in disgrace. With the HOA permanently neutered, my ranch entered a golden era of prosperity. Freed from constant attacks, I expanded my herd, invested in better equipment, and even built a small visitors center where school groups could tour the facility and learn about sustainable ranching. My organic fertilizer business grew, attracting clients from across the state. The ranch became more than just a home. It became a symbol of resilience, self-reliance, and victory over petty tyranny. Every time I drove past the HOA's now quiet clubhouse, I was reminded of how far we had come. The community, once divided, slowly healed. Many former HOA members became customers, buying fertilizer for their gardens and inviting me to neighborhood events they once would have barred me from attending. I never expected friendship from those who once tried to destroy me, but I accepted their olive branches for the sake of peace. On a bright autumn morning, as I stood by the fence that started it all, watching my cattle graze beneath a golden sky, Miguel walked up beside me. "You ever think it would end like this?" he asked. I chuckled. "Not in a million years. But you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. He nodded, looking out over the thriving ranch. You turned their spite into your strength, and that, I realized, was the ultimate victory. The HOA had fined me for my fence. I had rezoned their land for manure storage. But in the end, I had built something far greater, a ranch untouched by small mines, secured by law and fueled by perseverance. And as long as I stood watch over this land, no one would ever take it from me again.